What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Universal Mastery. Welcome back to my public YouTube channel where if you're new, let me explain, where I break down the occult sciences and I break them down to a very practical level so that you can simply use them and apply them in your day-to-day life and get real, actual results with what it is that I am teaching here on my public channel. Okay? Simply by applying your observation and awareness. Very simple to do. So before we get started, once again, if you are new and you're listening to this, let me give you a little bit of a understanding of who you're getting this information from. My name is Jeremiah Schwartz. I am a professional occultist. I'm fully initiated in the entirety of the Kabbalistic tree, and I'm studied when it comes to the 22 major arcana of the tarot deck. Okay, and I'm also studying when it comes to planetary energies in direct association with astrology. Okay, so now that that's understood and that's said, let's go into the topic of our today's video. So this is going to be a unique topic, as always. We are going to be discussing psychedelics. Okay, this is a topic that 110% sure needs to be discussed in regards and in association with the occult field and with spirituality in general. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about in this video is along the lines of psychedelics. Are psychedelics necessary to use to gain psychic capabilities or to have profound spiritual experiences or to open up certain levels of consciousness? And I'm also going to be sharing a little bit of my personal experience with psychedelics. So if this is something that you are interested in and intrigued by, then obviously this is your video. So I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so here's the first thing that I want everyone listening to understand, okay? There is a lot of people that live and die by the psychedelic. What does that mean? There's a lot of people that love the idea. Let me turn my mic down just a tad. Check 1 2, check 1 2. There's a lot of people that live by the idea of psychedelics in regards to the specific individual having an ability to even have any sort of psychic phenomena take place. Okay, what does this mean? In a nutshell, there are people that depend on drugs, but in this case, depend on psychedelics in order for them to have any sort of spiritual and psychic type of experience. Okay? Now, is that going to be a beneficial and a good thing? Absolutely not. You never, ever, 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 and this can go with many other areas in life in general, you never want to depend on a substance. Okay? You never, ever, ever want to depend on a substance, especially in this case, a psychedelic, to produce psychic phenomena. That's the first thing that I want to make understood about this video. There is a lot of people that depend on these types of things. They depend on psychedelics to have psychic experiences. Now, the truth is, can you access certain areas, degrees, and levels of consciousness that produce different hormonal responses, literally wake up dormant DNA? Can you do these things without psychedelics? And the answer is yes. Okay, can you have psychic, spiritual experiences on a very profound level without psychedelics or without taking psychedelics? the answer is yes. And can you do it on a controlled and consistent basis? Absolutely. That's what the occult field is about. It's about using certain types of occult practices. You could even go as far as saying techniques of engaging certain types of symbols, using your voice in certain different tones and vibrations that access certain areas of your own consciousness that are also interconnected with the universe itself, pulling energies basically from the universe into your consciousness and then projecting it in the real world on the physical plane. Okay, and then there's many dimensions that come into play behind doing these types of things, and these are all different types of practices and techniques that you can find in the occult field. Okay, this is why the occult is so popular. But going back to the point, when it comes to psychedelics, is there a place for them? Is there value in psychedelics? Because I don't want to make this video and leave the video at just, oh yeah, there's a lot of people that depend on psychedelics, and that's the only way they can have spiritual or psychic experiences. And then I'm going to wrap it up. No, there is 100% sure a place for psychedelics. Okay. Now, I'm going to be sharing my personal perspective on what I believe to be probably the most common and most valuable way to be using psychedelics. And it's also going to be connected to my own personal experience. Okay. So for me, before I was even involved in the occult field, before I had a YouTube channel, before I did what I'm doing, okay, and before I do what it is that I do on a daily basis, I was, another kid that was young. I had a group of friends. I've always been surrounded by very profound and unique people. Typically out of the ordinary, not very linear minded, robot like, but very unique, open minded individuals. That is something that is definitely a part of my upbringing. But, as I said, I was a kid, and like a lot of kids that are young, I experimented with psychedelics. Okay. Now, officially, the first psychedelic that crossed my path was the psychedelic of the shrooms. That's what we used to call them, mushrooms. Okay. Um, Now I want to say I was about the age of, I want to say either I want to say I was probably 17 years old or 18 years old around the first time that I took mushrooms. Now, when I took mushrooms, I had a very profound experience. It was very deep, and it was also with one of my cousins and one of my cousin's friend, and we all took the mushrooms and we all had a very profound and deep experience to the degree where it felt like an emotional experience. Okay, there was actually some emotional healing that went behind that experience. That's how deep it was. It was very real and it felt very serious. Um, and it also opened my eyes a little bit. You could say maybe on sort of like an emotional level. And then fast forward a couple more years, I want to say 2 to 3 years, I started getting into other types of drugs and other types of psychedelics. So I say drugs because at the time I was also experimenting with different types of drugs, like smoking marijuana. I got introduced to pills, unfortunately, Xanax, Adderall, things in that nature. I'm thankful that I got to experience those because now I have knowledge on them and I have wisdom about the experience that most people will never have. But I used to be addicted to those types of pills, and they were very detrimental towards my own well being. So I'm thankful that I got to experiment with that and experience it to know what those types of substances can do to the human's mindset, belief system, and psychology and things in that nature, physical body even. But I was at a point, this is like 2 to 3 years later from the first time that I used shrooms, and another opportunity came up where there was mushrooms that was brought about. I was with a group of my friends that I've been associated with for quite some time, and we all took the mushrooms and we took large doses. Every time I've taken mushrooms, it's always been pretty large doses. Definitely enough to get the psychedelic experience, the uh, the trippy psychic phenomena. And this second time that I took shrooms, meanwhile, I was also using other types of drugs as well, like the pills that I mentioned. And I took these shrooms and I had a very, very, very profound experience. And I remember during the time I saw spider webs, I saw spiders. It was a very, what you would call a dark trip. Now, from one perspective, you can look at it and say, that's a bad trip. But from another perspective, you can look at it and say, that was a very profound trip that had a lot of deep, deep meaning that went behind it. And that was the case. So during that trip, I was seeing all different types of visuals. I was more so isolated within my own consciousness. I was diving deep within myself and it was uncomfortable. And I was seeing at the same time, as I mentioned, these visualizations, I was seeing spiders, I was seeing spider webs, which is very interesting. As you know, a lot of you that study my YouTube channel, you hear me talk about the tunnels of Set that exist behind the Kabbalistic tree. And in the tunnels of Set exist the spiders. Okay, so during this psychedelic trip, I was gaining access to that area of the multiverse in Universe B, which was the tunnels of Set. And I was able to visualize and literally see psychically these spiders and spider webs and things in that nature. And there was a lot of death that I was feeling. I was literally feeling like death. And I remember when we went back, there's a whole story that goes behind this trip. I'm not going to go into detail, but we ended up going back to the apartment that we were all spending the night at. And we're still all on the shrooms. We're still all having this psychedelic experience. And I remember I was laying on the couch and I had this little couch all to myself. And I laid there and I crossed my arms over one another, just like a mummy. And I remember in my own psychedelic experience, I felt like I was dying. Now, when I say that, I don't mean physically. I wasn't like worried about my physical life, but I literally felt like on a deep, profound level, I was dying. I was going through a death, and that's the reason why I crossed my arms like a mummy. Now, in the room with my friends around, I didn't explain that to them, and I didn't tell them that because this was something that I was internally going through as I was taking on this position of a mummy and literally feeling like I was dying on some level. I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I felt like I was dying. Now, come to find out, the next morning, we all wake up because we eventually all got to sleep. I eventually ended up falling asleep on that couch in that same position I was in, and I was very cold too. I remember being very cold. And I remember we all eventually woke up, and that next morning I felt very different. Okay? How did I feel different? I had my first ego death. Now, when I say first ego death, I mean conscious ego death. I've had ego deaths before that, but I had my first very profound conscious ego death, and it all was triggered from that psychedelic experience that started with those mushrooms. And from that day forward, I felt like a different person. I started talking different. I started sounding different. And the different wasn't bad. It was actually more of me. It was more in alignment with who I am and what I am, more in touch with my soul, you could say. But it was very uncomfortable because I felt like a different person. at the time, I didn't really even feel ready to go through an ego death. I didn't know I was going through an ego death. I didn't know I had gone into an ego death. So when I woke up feeling different that next morning, I couldn't understand it. So obviously the rational, analytical, logical, intellectual mind wants to start finding reasons as to why do I feel different? Why do I think different? What's going on with me mentally? It's looking for its old state of being, so to speak. So my mind, started playing these little tricks, as in, you know, maybe the drug did something to you mentally. Maybe there was something wrong with the shrooms. And that's not the case. That's not at all what it was. I went through an ego death, and now that I can recall the experience, it makes complete sense. That's why I felt like I was dying that night leading into the next morning, where I realized I was different. It was an ego death. And it was almost like I ritualistically acted out going through that death physically, leading up to that next morning where I completely felt, thought, and you could go as far as saying acted differently. And that difference was more so in touch with who I am. It was more so in touch with my actual being, my actual soul. And that was very profound. And yes, it was triggered by the mushrooms. And actually, following that, I stopped taking the Xanax that I used to be pretty much addicted to. And I think me stopping taking the Xanax was actually more so unconscious and subconscious. Um, and once again, it was all triggered by that ego death. But that ego death naturally triggered me to question so many aspects of reality that I was previously blind to. So this was all triggered. This is the point. This was all triggered from a psychedelic experience from mushrooms. Okay. Now, from that point, I have not taken mushrooms since, and my life has gone through many different types of circumstances and experiences that eventually led me into diving into the occult field, where now I know how to access these types of psychic phenomena and psychedelic experiences without any drugs whatsoever. But the point is that it all started, if I'm being honest, it literally all started when I embraced mushrooms and had that first profound ego death. From that moment forth, everything seemed very different to me. Okay. And it caused me to get to where I am now in the long run, which is very interesting. It's very fascinating. And that's what I think in regards to when it comes to psychedelics. I think they have a role. I think they're extremely profound and powerful, but that role should be to cause something similar as to what happened with me, where it basically ripped the lid off of the container. And now that the lid's off the container, now the essence can start to emanate out from the container itself. So, what I'm basically saying in a nutshell is that it broke the seal for me. That psychedelic experience that led to that ego death was what broke the seal that then led me to, in the very long run, where I am now as a professional occultist. Okay, so I was not the person, and I am not the person that continuously takes psychedelics over and over and over and depends on them to have trippy experiences or psychic phenomena become manifest. Okay, that's not me. Once again, I can trigger this naturally. I can trigger this with a flashcard on a piece of paper, a symbol on that flashcard, and then a sequence of words that I can say over and over and over in a specific space where there's no distractions and silence, and I have a few tools set up. I can trigger these same types of, you could say, emotions and even chemicals within the body, within the brain, to access that psychic phenomena. Okay? So for me, and I think for a lot of people, the benefit of a psychedelic is to cause that moment in that person or that individual's life where they finally realize they are not who they think they are. Okay? You are not who you think you are until you go through a very profound ego death like psychedelic experience that really makes you question your own nature and your own thought process and your own belief system and everything that's connected with that. And once again, that's what happened with me. And I think this actually happens with a lot of people. I think if people are honest with themselves that have experimented with psychedelics, in this case, I'm going to say specifically mushrooms, because I have taken other psychedelics before, like what's called LSD, and they were very different. LSD was nothing compared to mushrooms. Mushrooms was when I had what I would call evolutionary experiences. LSD was more so just weird phenomena, popping up, things moving around. It was just very strange. It wasn't more so, I would say, evolutionary based for me. I think the mushrooms, if you're going to be embracing any sort of psychedelic for any sort of evolutionary transformative purpose, my recommendation would be the mushrooms. Okay, now obviously, if you're going to be embracing that, do a lot of research on what you end up getting your hands on and what you're going to, what you're going to end up embrace, what you're going to end up consuming, and also ask yourself that question of why are you doing it? It's always important to have that intent mixed in the equation as well. The intent is key. But at the end of the day, once again, psychedelics for me was basically that beginning stage that led me to where I am now. So the key is that you want to realize that psychedelics are very powerful, and I'm going to specifically focus on the mushroom. The mushroom is very powerful, but you can still get addicted to it and you can still depend on it for psychic phenomena. So if you are unaware that you can trigger the same types of experiences, the same types of chemicals and emotions within your body naturally, rather than having to take a substance like a mushroom, then you're fooling yourself because you can. Okay, so do not fall along the lines of that type of person that thinks you need the mushroom or the psychedelic to even embrace that type of experience. It should be the initial start towards getting you on the path of recognizing there are ways to trigger it naturally. Okay? And, once again, at the end of the day, everything in moderation is what is most important. So to do mushrooms maybe once a year or once every other year, that's not a problem. But if you're doing it every 2 months, every 3 months, and once again, it's if you're depending on it, if you think that's the only access way or the only gateway to get psychic potential, deeper levels of consciousness, manifest psychic phenomena, then you're wrong. Because I'm telling you, in the occult field, there are many different types of practices. There are many different types of tools and techniques that you can apply that will actually trigger way more profound experiences than just a psychedelic experience, which is crazy. Okay? So that's where I'm going to wrap up the video. I'm going to leave it there. And hopefully, you were able to really absorb that information and get the value from it. So that's where I'm going to leave it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the video, definitely hit the thumbs up. Okay, thumbs up button right there. Also, come down and hit the notification bell because I post videos as often as I can. And with content like this, you obviously do not want to miss out. So make sure you hit the notification bell. And then come down here and hit the subscribe button. Okay, because if you consume my content and you are not yet subscribed, then why? Why are you not subscribed? Make sure you subscribe. Okay, takes a second. So yeah, definitely go ahead and do that. And then the next thing I'd like to say is if you know any family, friends, or have any social media platforms that you think could gain value from this type of content, then you have my full permission to copy and paste the link and send it out. Okay? My intent is to spread this content like a wildfire. Okay? So go ahead and do that. Now also come down here and add me on Instagram. My handle is JER_477. It's very easy to type in. Okay. Add me on Instagram. You're going to see I post unique things there. And oftentimes I give heads up before I go live on YouTube. And once again, I just post unique things. So if you want to see me on Instagram, check out my Instagram. Okay, very simple to type in. And the next thing is if you would like to gain access to a private Facebook community, if you go to the little drop down, you click that little drop down, scroll down, you're going to see there is a post that says private Facebook community, and underneath of it, there's a link. Okay, click that link, follow where the link takes you, and then you can request to join in a private Facebook group that has over 300 plus members and is active on a daily basis. Okay, so if you want to gain access, request to join, and I will add you in. Okay, now the next thing I want to take your awareness to is the first link in the YouTube description. You click the little drop down. Right there, you are going to see my Patreon. Okay, on my Patreon, I have exclusive content that is not on my public YouTube channel, and that is for many reasons. Okay, this is very powerful and very valuable content that ranges from live streams, blog posts, videos where I share information in regards to the Kabbalistic tree, the Sephiroth, and the Qliphoth. I discuss many very profound, ritualistic, occult topics on the Patreon in many different formats. Okay. And then for tier 3, you gain access to an entire magic training course, which takes you step by step on how to develop proper psychic power in its most simple form. Definitely recommended for beginners. And then for tier 4, this is going to give you access to becoming a Universe B vampire. Okay, so this is a service that I do for my top tier members of the Patreon, which is the most popular tier of the Patreon, and that's for many different reasons. And what I do for this service is actually the only service that I perform for anything, is I perform on the 29th of every single month that has a 29th, which is every month except for one, a service that is very advanced, where it is a ritual that I design myself and I set up, and I perform it on the participants of the service to completely transform your energetic structure to be more Universe B dominant. So what this basically means, for those of you that don't fully understand that, you can exist energetically in Universe B, which is the dark energy aspects and areas in our own multiverse. So what this means is you start to pull in energy from chaos and from dark energy around you and turn it into your own power. Rather than existing in Universe A and having Universe B phenomena, dark energy and chaos, harm you, do things to you that you don't understand, which is all connected to your own unconscious and subconscious at the end of the day. This specific ritual that I perform changes your energetic structure so you're more receptive to chaos, more receptive to dark energy, and once again, turn it into your own power. Okay? So the longer you've been a Universe B vampire, the more power your energy field has developed over time. Okay? And this is all accessible to the top tier, tier 4, the Patreon. If you're interested in the top tier or anything within the Patreon, check out that first link in the YouTube description. Right now, we've got 160 plus members approaching the 170 mark. So I'll leave it there. First link in the YouTube description. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, huge shout out to all of you who are Patreon members. I highly appreciate all of you for taking your knowledge, studies, and practices to that other side. So huge shout outs. Okay, so now the next link that I want to take your awareness to is the second link in the YouTube description. Just go down, click that second link. You can't miss it. That is where you can book a tarot card reading with me. Okay, now in this tarot card reading, I can literally pinpoint exactly where you are on the Kabbalistic tree in this moment. I can tell you what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and what you're going through in the present moment. and then tell you what to expect as you move into the near future and long-term future based on your traveling within that Kabbalistic tree. Okay? It is a very unique, different reading than you've probably ever received before. The reason why I can pinpoint where you are on the Kabbalistic tree is because I am a professional occultist who understands Kabbalah much more in depth than the average person, even a lot more so than a lot of occultists. Okay, so I've done over, let's see, at this point, we're approaching, it's got to be 300 readings now. I get tons of great feedback, so that's enough said. I'll leave it there. If you're interested in it, look into the second link in the YouTube description. Okay? Now, for the third link that I would like to take your awareness to, obviously it's the third link in the YouTube description. This is where you can become a YouTube member. Okay? Now, as you are a YouTube member, you gain access to a multitude of different benefits that range from benefits that you get within the live streams, but also, and most importantly, you gain access to the Psychic Warfare Emoji Program. So this means when you're a YouTube member, you have access to specific emojis that I've personally designed myself that can be used in a psychic warfare manner to cause psychic damage to a specific target. Okay, it is literally the most simple form and the most simple way to use psychic warfare. And you can gain direct access to it by becoming a YouTube member at the third link in the YouTube description. And there are a bunch of people that are currently using it right now as we speak. Okay, so if this is something that you would like to take advantage of, check out the third link below. Okay, other than that, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I'm going to wrap it up. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day or night wherever you are, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.